After splashing back down in the Atlantic Ocean on September 18th, SpaceX's and the world's first all-civilian mission to orbit came to an official end. To call the nearly 3-day mission a milestone in the space world would be an understatement, especially considering how big of an accomplishment Inspiration4 was. Although it's only been a few days since its crew splashed down, there have already been thousands of articles and interviews written over this historical moment. So why is Inspiration4 such a big deal, and why was it so important? Well, the most apparent reason is thanks to just who was on board the Crew Dragon resilient spacecraft. Contrary to every mission beforehand, 4 civilians were chosen to take the revolutionary trip to orbit. While that may not seem like a necessarily massive step in terms of spaceflight, it is. This mission was proof to SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, the company, those on board and to the world, that privately crewed spaceflights are a possibility. We've never seen anything like this before, with a computer-piloted spaceflight containing civilians exclusively. Usually you have a few astronauts on board who have faced hundreds, if not thousands of hours of training, planning, and have had quite a bit of flight experience. However, while 2 newly christened astronauts, Jared Isaacman and Christopher Sembrowski, have previous flying experience, it's nothing close to piloting a near 13,000-kilogram spacecraft. Speaking of which, let's quickly look over who managed to win these coveted seats aboard the Resilience. These 4 entirely civilian astronauts consisted of a businessman, entrepreneur, physician assistant, and Air Force veteran. Jared Isaacman, the crew's mission commander, is the founder of Draken International, a private Air Force company, and Shift4 Payments, a payment processing company. The mission's pilot, Silan Proctor, is a geology professor, science communicator, and entrepreneur who won a seat in a Shark Tank-esque competition. Haley Arsenault, the Resilience medical officer, was chosen by Isaacman thanks to her connection to St. Jude Children's Hospital, a significant beneficiary of the flight, and her survival of bone cancer. Lastly, the Resilience mission specialist Christopher Sembrowski is an Air Force veteran who received a ticket on board after his friend gifted it to him. Out of these 4, you'll likely notice the point mentioned earlier. Not a single person has virtually any spaceflight experience or formal training. The closest would be Isaacman and Sembrowski, who respectively run an Air Force providing company and is an Air Force veteran. Past those experiences, however, there was 0 experience on board. And the unique thing isn't the fact that they're civilians. We've seen past examples of NASA launching civilians into space, such as with current NASA Administrator Bill Nelson's space shuttle flight in 1986. However, Nelson, a representative for Florida at the time, was accompanied by 3 returning astronauts, 2 first-time astronauts, and an aerospace specialist. Compared to the crew aboard Inspiration4, you can likely see a few differences. While the 4 did have around 7 months of formal training, it's nothing like previous astronauts' rigorous processes. As such, there are a few differences between these astronauts and those of the past days. It's easy to see how, thanks to the complete exclusion of 6 professional astronauts and the tiny fact that the entire Dragon spacecraft was automated. After all, that's 3 days of 4 amateur astronauts aboard an entirely automated spacecraft. The whole time, all they needed to do was enjoy the view and use the restroom occasionally. Inspiration4 was truly the first time Wikipedia could throw up the mission type space tourism on the mission's page without hiding the usual extreme stress and physical work put behind piloting a spacecraft. With Inspiration4, it was indeed tourism. 4 tourists aboard the road trip of a lifetime. To state how crucial this is in pushing SpaceX's goals for eventual tourist trips to Mars, realize that this trip could have worked with anybody. Sure, the crew had to go through a few months of preparation training, although they didn't have to use it. But theoretically, they could have had no training, hopped within the Dragon capsule, and had the same experience. Not a single person had to do anything that interrupted the mission. If SpaceX can send everyday citizens and a billionaire into space with little to no training in 2021, imagine what the technology they're planning to bring to the market will be able to do in a few years. We're already at the point that a private company can send people into space because they want to. It's that simple. Speaking of a private company, that's another reason why this mission is just so important. There was no NASA. For all SpaceX cared, NASA could have given all its workers 3 days off to watch the event, and it wouldn't have made a difference. After all, this was a private mission. Sure, you've had the recent private Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin's flights. Still, those were 86 kilometers and 94 kilometers above the Earth's surface, and Virgin's flight had professional pilots aboard the craft. On the other hand, Inspiration4 hit an altitude of 585 kilometers, or 150 kilometers above the ISS, revolved around the Earth for 3 days, and had no professional pilots on board. That's something that no other private company or public company has been able to accomplish. Not Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, or even NASA. It might seem repetitive, but that's a fact that can't be understated, especially considering how companies and agencies have tried to get to the same conclusion for decades. SpaceX has just started committing towards missions like Inspiration4, and they've already managed to accomplish it without anything more than a request from a billionaire businessman. Excluding the apparent issue of funding and logistics for more of these missions, SpaceX has already laid the foundation for a program that can repeatedly and safely send automated spacecraft to orbit with civilians on board. Additionally, there's one more little thing that Inspiration4 helps to push: the understanding of how quick spaceflight affects ordinary people. After all, this mission lasted just 3 days from launch to splashdown, and we've never really had an equivalent before. Since SpaceX is bringing a form of space travel that we've never really seen before, there are countless effects that many trips could cause. Luckily, it seems as though they've prepared for that for quite a while. The mission's medical officer, Arsenault, told viewers of a spacecraft livestream that they were taking several swabs of different parts of their bodies to evaluate the microbiome and how that changes in the 3 days in space. She later mentioned her giving of samples and blood samples for the research teams, as well as doing cognitive tests to the crew. While that's not immediately an exciting notion, it's a necessity if we ever plan on taking routine trips around the Earth, Moon, or Mars anytime soon. After all, we only know the basics of near-zero gravity and exclusively very long-term and very short-term exposure. Think of data from the International Space Station, or perhaps quick orbital flights with companies like Blue Origin. Other than those, we don't really know much current information about the impact of space on standard people. Plus, we haven't had many 3-day orbital flights. Again, there's data from other space flights, such as the Apollo programs or any other older missions, but that's from decades ago. Not only have spacecraft changed, but so have the people and technology behind spaceflight and the measurement of space's effects. Things have changed quite a bit, and that's what makes Inspiration4 so exciting and important for the future of spaceflight. From what we've seen so far, SpaceX is leading off this decade of space innovation strong, with the rapid evolution of Starship, the relative success of Starlink so far, and of course the successful launch and splashdown of Inspiration4 and its civilian crew. Things are growing more optimistic every day, and there's genuine hope that we'll reach Apollo-level interest in space once again. Of course, who knows? We certainly don't, and it seems nobody else does. There's obvious hope that things work out as planned, and with so much rapid innovation in the last few years, SpaceX will continue to get more people interested and involved in the space industry. So with that in mind, what do you think? With the significant success of Inspiration4, do you think SpaceX will continue to expand its space tourism missions? Or do you think the company will focus on other, more important missions? After all, it is SpaceX, meaning the next mission might be something even more successful. Either way, let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and we hope you've learned a bit more about just why Inspiration4 was so important. If you have any more thoughts on the matter, let us know about those too, and make sure to check out some of our other videos as we dive deeper into the future of spaceflight.